it actually came out of the Second World War. The idea was to create to educate people so that they would not repeat the horror of the Second World War. And we're preparing students for the 21st century. We started doing that in 1968. We currently have we have about 2 million students, and we have 5,600 schools. That was as of January, so we only update our statistics a few months. Schools have multiple programs. We have 4 programs, so there are more programs than schools. And all of our subjects are taught in at least 3 languages, English, Spanish, and French. But we also have new response languages, so Chinese is huge, but English is the biggest cohort. And our mission, we are all very proud and very committed to our mission to educate for a better and more peaceful world, and we really try to do that. I know it sounds soft and woke, but we've been doing this for 50 years, so we keep on doing this. One of the things that is a leading guide in the IB across all the programs is the learner profile, and I really recommend you having a look. Just go to our website, type in learner profile, and you will get this. It's a set of 10 skills and dispositions that we, across all our programs from 3 up until 19, try to foster in our students. And these are the traditional elements that everybody talks about, making your students be curious, knowledgeable, that they think critically, that they can communicate, and that they can think about what they're doing. So that's not special, but I'm very, very proud of these. These are more character-defining dispositions and also add most to our mission, because if you are caring and open-minded, but also have a backbone, it's called risk-taking, but what we're actually trying to make sure that our students have a principled backbone and they know they choose things that are good for the most people and not only for themselves, but also try to live a balanced life. And as I said, we try to teach for the 21st century, and within the 21st century skills, there are the 4 C's: collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communication. And these are throughout the learner profile. They're in there. So this is the collaboration in purple. You might not be able to see that because it doesn't always show up in the colors. Creative thinking, so we really try to assess creative thinking as well. Critical thinking, as everybody else wants to do. Communication, but we also have a 5th C, which we really, really emphasize in a lot of our courses, but also in our assessment, because we do believe that if people, we ask them to do things, but we don't show that how much we value them by trying to assess it. Some people and some schools will just not do it. So we have a 5th C, curiosity, which is also known, of course, as inquiry. So if this is so valuable, are we really assessing it? So I'm going to try to convince you that at least we're trying very hard. And because we've been trying very hard, but we sort of assume that people who are creating our assessments know what we want, but we thought it might be time to actually commission a study. So we commissioned ACER and Oxford University to create some kind of framework so that we could basically benchmark what we were doing. And they created 2, one for curiosity and one for creativity. The one for creativity is here. It has 3 dimensions, and it actually has a dimension more than the one that PISA was proposing, which is the first dimension, problem definition. Within the PISA framework, they do talk about it, but it's not in the framework they use for their assessment. So I'm going to use this one to have a look with examples of a few of our assessments. Are we even trying to do this? But one of the nice things about this study is that they actually provided us with a very student-friendly definition of creativity. And they, I think this is familiar, placed creativity on a scale from big C to small c. So the big C is, Einstein, Tolstoy, people who have really big thoughts. And then there was the little c, which is the everyday enhancement. And when I was reading this, I thought, well, having had children, I know there's even a smaller c, so I'm proposing a tiny c, which is, really just everyday things, and I know how to do something in a more efficient and effective way. And what I think we are doing in IB, but also here at Cambridge, we're looking in this area. We're not looking only for Nobel laureates. It would be nice if people were more rewarded for anything they do in that area. And they also looked into the options we had for measuring creativity. And the first thing they said is, it's very wide, and in this they align with what OECD and PISA are doing, saying you shouldn't have just one thing, saying, okay, we're going to measure all this and just once we're going to do creativity and that's done. We're not going to do that, so we do it multiple times. And they said you could do it grading on the curve, how exceptional are people comparing to others, or do you have benchmarks or criteria? And they say you can do it by criteria as long as they are relevant, clear, and actually appropriate. So IB tries to do the latter as well, because we have so many schools all over the world, and it's very difficult to compare a student in Asia to a student in South America if you don't have the work at the same time. So let's look at the first dimension, and I'm going to look at the second one first, so formulating a problem, because this is something that IB is not the only one doing this. And it goes, the levels go from 1 to 4. The first one is describing an obvious and predictable interpretation of and the top one is frame a problem in a relatively unique way. So read them like that. And if we do ask our students in many exams to at least have a detailed and considered definition and cast it in an interesting, challenging way. And sometimes we come across students who do this in a unique and unusual way, and we do reward that. So we do have levels in our criteria and in our mark schemes that try to reward, but we don't want to over-ask. So it's one of the questions whenever we're writing that is the top level that you're describing, is that achievable for this age group? And discovery-oriented behavior, so basically doing the inquiry, and what we always look for is a diverse range of ideas and information in exams or in coursework. But we normally we don't expect unconventional connections. Sometimes they happen, but we try to be careful with that, because with this age group, if you ask for unconventional, you might get weird for weird's sake, what we call. So we sort of emphasize thoughtful connections above weird ones. Then the second dimension, generating ideas. Again, we're going to start in the middle. Flexibility, so shifting from one perspective to another, disciplinary in brackets, because we do actually have quite a lot of interdisciplinary subjects now, but also in the single subject work, we try to encourage students to move from perspective to perspective. And there is a core subject called Theory of Knowledge, TOK, which actually trains our students to do that. The core, many of the students, whilst they're doing this, have no idea why they're doing this. A lot of the teachers really don't know why they're doing this, but it gives them the cutting edge when they go on into life, because they know, they have been trained to understand that if you look at something from a certain perspective, you can come to different conclusions about truth, about what is valuable, than if you look at it in a different way. And that is something that many students in a more traditional school have to discover for themselves. And we have already trained them. So, oh, wait a minute, gone the wrong way. And that is especially TOK, Theory of Knowledge, and our interdisciplinary courseworks, our internal assessments. I might make a mistake that I'm saying AI instead of IA, because we also have academic integrity, which is also AI, so sometimes we get confused what we're talking about. Then experimentation, looking at things again across disciplines. We do ask that regularly, and we ask our students not only across disciplines, but also in all our subjects, they are rewarded for looking at things from a local, a regional, or a global perspective. And it's in our criteria, so we make them to do this, and if they don't get to the highest level of the marks. So again, TOK, but also something called the World Studies Extended Essay, which is always interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. And then fluency. So this is a difficult one, which is why it's in lighter pink. In the definition, it's about the number and how many ideas you're going to do. And we saw at Anna Katarina that very often, if you submit something for assessment, you're not going to tell everybody about the 25 idiotic ideas that led you nowhere. You're going to say, I had 3 that actually produced something. So we don't really, we're not really able to assess that summatively. But there are a few components, like in the arts, there's a component in the art subjects, there are components called experimentation, where we actually ask for proof, for evidence that they have experimented in different ways, and the more diverse the experimentation is, the higher the marks they can potentially get. And then the last one, quality of the ideas, which is, so the second and the third sort of overlap with the one that the PISA framework uses. Again, let's start in the middle, fitness for purpose. So basically thinking about, so I've got this solution, does it make any sense? What are the weaknesses? What are the strengths? That is part of the course. We do that almost everywhere. It's part of the criteria that they need to do for coursework, but also even in exams. So this is not about a busman. This is business management. I'm sorry, otherwise it didn't fit. Economics, and DesTech is design technology, and CompSci is computer science. These are a few subjects that we teach. And then elaboration, more and more in the newer courses, we are saying, okay, so you did this, you got this solution, so what are you going to do with it? And how could you improve it? And what do you think that the effect would be? So we think we're doing that as well. Especially in the interdisciplinary one. So ESS is Environmental Systems and Society, which is an interdisciplinary subject that looks at sustainability from a scientific but also societal perspective. And Sports, Exercise and Health Sciences, which is science and psychology mixed course, mostly, I think. I hope my colleagues who are creating this don't disagree with me. And then we have the jewel in the crown, originality. This is something that our examiners, whenever we create a new thing and we trial this, they say, I'm missing the originality a bit. Can you just, can you do something about that? So we do try to that, but again, the top level is unusual, unexpected ideas for the peer group. We try not to encourage that too much because you get kids doing really strange suggestions. So we try to encourage distinctive, memorable. So it's unique for the peer group, it's new for them, but they shouldn't go out on a limb. Sometimes they do, and sometimes it's fantastic. But normally we don't necessarily require that. So in summary, it looks like we're doing these pretty well in exams and in coursework, and we are trying to do these. So. We're not perfect. It doesn't always work. It's not always, it doesn't always work out the right way. But so far, so good, we thought. Okay, all happy. And then life happened. So we had actually already started looking at these various apps before the panic happened. So it must have been, late last year. And we were sort of worried because IB requires a lot of writing. We are really, really big on essays. So what's going on? They're saying you can write these. So I looked into it, and actually initially I was a little bit disappointed, but then I'm not that deep into AI as many people here. So I'm a consumer, and I had a look at these, and I thought, they're maybe not that great. There's a lot of stuff doing proofreading, which is really helpful, grammar, paraphrasing, really great, especially for our second language speakers who sometimes get marked down because they don't know how to express themselves, and this would be really helpful. And then you get the writing tools, and the ones that I found initially, this was before OpenAI came out, were all SEO. And I thought, what is SEO? Search engine optimized. So they are actually to writing fluff for internet and to make sure it ends up high in your Google ranking. But they're also very, most of them at that time were sort of, how shall I say, specialized. So for copywriting, for novelists, apparently Text Spark, I don't know. And then there was this one. And large language models, which is, I think, a good name for it, because that's actually what it's doing, and it's not necessarily, I'm sorry, Anna, not necessarily intelligent. So let's talk about that. How easy. So this is, I have to say, disclaimer, this was as of Friday. So the world might have changed in the meantime. So the ones that we tried out write paragraphs. They don't write a whole book or even a 1,500 word essay. There are settings that you need to fiddle with, because otherwise what comes out, you think, oh yeah, that's not a human, or it's a very dumb human who wrote that. I call them magic prompts. So for instance, if you ask for a list of sources, it will not give you anything. But if you ask for scientific citations and a reference list, it will give you that. You do have to check whether all the references actually exist, but it did give you that. So what comes out is really dependent on your prompt, which is why the prompt engineer is the next go-to job that is apparently already disappearing. So this is how fast it goes. And when you're doing this and you come into this cold without all the knowledge of some of you here, it does take a few hours to figure out how it works. And one of the things that I found really interesting, so we very often ask for a personal reflection on what did you learn. So just as a joke, I put something in, and I never knew that playing Romeo was so life-changing for me. It's really easy. So it doesn't, they generate something that sounds and looks really plausible and based on nothing whatsoever. So currently, they're type dependent, but this has already been overtaken, I think. I think ChatGPT-4 will be able to interpret images, so it may not be as type dependent as it was. And it's really important to realize that what you get may not be real. And I'll go into that a little bit more. And I'm actually, I don't know if it already exists, but I'd like to introduce the term AI confabulation. Confabulation is something that people in deep dementia do when they find a gap in their memory. They just make something up, and AI does the same. So if you ask it about the Ukraine war, it might put something that is actually from a different war, from Syria or from Chechnya or Georgia, because you have the word Russia in it, and it will just overimpose the word Ukraine on it, but it might not be relevant at all. And if you don't know that, you might get into trouble. And for some reason, glitches find me. I am also able to let it produce complete gibberish. Done that several times. I don't know, might be me. Anyway, what is IB doing about it? So we had this whole come over. It's because we've been thinking about this a little bit longer, we didn't immediately panic. We panicked a little bit, but then we thought, okay, let's sit down and think. So you might have read, my boss, Matt Glanville, was in the Times. Our position currently is, we're not stopping you from AI, because basically, we don't know, we can't detect it, and if we can't detect it, we can't enforce it. So this is a new tool. This could be fantastic. I'm actually quite excited about it. But for now, whenever you use it, it's like any other source, you need to acknowledge it. I don't know, we're not entirely up to date on, are there any rules? Is it like, a web page where you have to say, I retrieved it on that day? It's not really useful for ChatGPT, because you can do it 10 times in a day and it's going to give you something else if you put the settings right. So, but this is our position for now. And we were already working on a research agenda or a way forward. And we also looked at which tasks at this moment, as of last Friday, would be most vulnerable. So the research agenda, firstly, real research. So currently, I've just got most of the data in from the first study, where we're looking at one component, one coursework component, and having examiners and teachers who are very, very familiar with the course and the component, channeling their inner student and generating credible student work. So it doesn't have to be the top mark, top grade, but credible student work. And I'm getting anecdotal evidence from them, which is really interesting if you want to hear a little bit about it. It's not been analyzed yet, but over lunch I am available for conversations. And there is also a start that we're looking at. So assuming that AI is, and all these things are tools, is AI literacy a competency that we should recognize separately? If it is, what does it look like? How do we design assessments that would assess that, or even create assessments where you do better when you're using that? So we are basically embracing the idea of it. And we're working with schools also to learn from them how they are starting to teach, so how their students to use it, because it's allowed, but how then do you use it effectively and ethically? And will be looking at using AI for high stakes marking as well, although it does sort of bring into the question, if students are using AI to write stuff and we are using AI to mark it, I'm going to leave you with that thought. Okay, currently text-heavy coursework tasks, probably most vulnerable, although because the DAL-E images up until now were not great, or not that you could recognize them, although I understand over dinner I heard it can now generate hands with 5 fingers. So one of the tells is already taken care of. Tasks where the majority of marks are given to stuff that otherwise would have been part of the inquiry, the looking up, your gathering of ideas. And then again, the personal reflection bit doesn't help a bit because it can generate that in a second. And anything that looks at established topics, but maybe with Bing chat, that's not so much because it integrates in internet immediately. And this is what we are going for. It's going to change. But we need to change with it to make sure that we can teach and train our students to use it well. We're not fearful, we are excited, and we think it fits our ambition to prepare our students for the future. We have a lot of work to do, but we're not scared of it. So let's have a look at if AI, as I experienced it, and I'm sure Anna Katerina is not agreeing with me, how that would stack up against our framework. Okay, dimension 1. Yeah, diverse range of ideas, no problem whatsoever. It might not all be true, but they're there. Unconventional, not so much. It's a probability model. So unconventional, by its nature, it has a lower probability. So I don't think it's going to come. Maybe I'm wrong. We can discuss this, but I don't think it's going to stack up there. Unique and unusual for the same reason. Because it's unique, it has a probability of 0.000001, so probably not going to come up. But it will be really, really good at conventional definitions and conventional frames of reference because of the nature of these things. Fluency, generating more ideas. Yes, you just put in another prompt, slightly different, you get even more ideas. Push past the obvious ones, maybe not so much, I'm not entirely sure. Multiple possibilities, considering multiple, it doesn't consider anything. It gives you stuff for you to consider. It can shift maybe, or it can give you distinct but mostly conventional ideas, but it probably will not shift perspectives unless you prompt it, because it's not something that humans normally do. So it will not be high probability in the training data. New perspectives, Again, because of their nature, if they were common, they wouldn't be new. So, because they're low probability. And it doesn't synthesize ideas. It may look like it's synthesizing ideas. It may use the words as if it's synthesizing ideas, but you need to be critical whether it really is. And it will manipulate elements with, in minimal or familiar ways. 5 minutes, okay, right? Okay, I'm going to speed up. Right, conventional ideas, yes. Conventional expectations, yes. Here's the introduction of peer group. It depends on what you do. So for instance, if you have a task for primary school or lower secondary, and it's been trained on material from internet, which is written by mostly adults, or for a part adult, somebody reading that and not knowing it was generated might think, oh gosh, this is a smart kid. So it might do that. It will not blend concept because that's just not probable. Far transfer doesn't happen that much. Sophisticated, again, relative to peer group, maybe yes. It will, if you give it an incomplete prompt, it will give an incomplete answer. It might give you weird answers because it confabulates, it has a gap, and it just makes something up. It does not synthesize, we've done that already. It doesn't justify outside anything about probability. It will not justify its choices for ethical reasons, for philosophical reasons, for cultural reasons. It will not do that, unless maybe if you ask it to now in ChatGPT 4, and it will probably mention its ideas maybe, or ideas that you can use, but it will not necessarily make the link that that is the inspiration. So, these, not so much, I think. I might be wrong. I might be wrong tomorrow. I don't know. This one, yes, for certain peer groups, yes. And then this is a mixed bunch. So, to be honest, we do still, using our framework, we think that if somebody sent something in that is completely or mostly AI generated, it would get a middling passing grade, which could be enough. It's worrying, because if they get a passing grade for something they didn't do, it can have real-world consequences. If somebody gets through all his engineering exams, basically just not learning anything, and then builds a bridge, might be in trouble. Okay, so where do we go from here? This is the study I was talking about. We are asking examiners and teachers to generate student work. And we're going to look at the familiarity of training. So I have to do several ones there, writing down the complete process, all the steps, the thinking aloud, what you normally would do in a think aloud protocol. But we're also looking at how much of the AI text they're using, and I asked them to keep as much as possible, and the quality of what comes out of English and Spanish, and that is really interesting. And they are using works that are, the usual suspects that everybody used, Streetcar Named Desire, Macbeth, blah-de-blah-de-blah, but also ones that are used, but not that often. And the differences there are also really interesting. And then we're going to mix it with authentic work, and we're going to have our examiners mark it. And we're also going to do, probably going to do a comparative judgment experiment with it, but that's later on. And this is one component, and we're going to do a few of these different ones. And then my boss, Anton Béguin, has just commissioned this study where we're looking into what is an AI competency? Can we create prototype tasks? And if we do and they work, what are the design principles? And these, I just want to give you a few philosophical questions. These are a few of my least favorite things I think about now and then. If doing something different, can AI ever do that? Anna Katarina will tell me later if that's possible. What's going to happen if we use these models that have been trained on what has already been written and nobody starts writing anything original anymore? There's this idea that people need language to talk and think about things, and if we have predictable language, will we ever think of anything unpredictable again? Currently, GTP4 says a set of models that improve on 3.5 and can understand as well as generate natural language code. I have a particular broad experience of understanding. There are different kinds of understanding, and I don't think this understanding is the one that I would value the most, but okay. The black swan event. If we tend to do everything on high probability, we'll never be prepared for anything that is improbable and devastating. And I believe that currently, the current AI, with all their caveats, you know, I am not supposed to give you this information. However, if you would want to know this, this is already harming people and thereby breaking Asimov's first robotic law as a science fiction fan. There you go. That's it. Am I in time? I think I am.